While innocent children play, others are beaten, neglected, even tortured. 3 Idaho children in just 4 years were killed in disturbing and shocking ways. But what could be even more tragic is that in each case, authorities were aware of abuse before the death. In 2009, 8-year-old Robert Manuel's body was found after his mother's boyfriend beat him to death. Caseworkers had been inside this same home, checking on the safety of another child just a month before. In 2012, 2-year-old Nikita's body was burned in a barrel outside her home after her mother beat and tortured her. The Department of Health and Welfare monitored Nikita from birth because of her mother's substance abuse, but closed their case a year before her murder. Then, in March, 2-year-old Joseph died from trauma. His stepfather is now charged with his murder. Next-door neighbor David Ray says it was far from the first time violence erupted inside the family's home.
There was a lot of abusive conversation going on between the two. Most of it involved him yelling at her.
Authorities responded to a report of abuse here 6 months before Joseph's death. The incident led to a battery charge involving LeBach's wife and an injury to child charge involving Joseph. But both charges were dismissed. In exchange, LeBach was ordered to attend anger management and parenting classes.
This guy, he needed professional help. I mean, you say that he had to go to some kind of an anger management class, but I don't think that quite covered it all said and done. I mean, you have little kids involved. Obviously, they should have been removed from the situation.
Ray says he's shocked that more wasn't done to protect the child who couldn't protect himself.
No, I think somebody did drop the ball, if not some buddies.
We took that concern to the Department of Health and Welfare, who released new information to us about their involvement in the case, assisting the Air Force Base Family Advocacy Program. They tell us the caseworker reported that LeBach's wife had moved out and said she wouldn't return, so the case was closed.
It was determined that there was no imminent safety issue and the case was closed.
But LeBach's wife and child did return. And by March, Joseph was dead. Do you think you could have done more in this case?
I think absent being intimately involved, again, the information I have is the same information you have regarding the specific case. So I don't know that I can give you an adequate answer in regards to that.
We wanted to take a closer look at the child welfare process in Idaho and went to the person who sees severe abuse firsthand, Idaho's only child abuse pediatrician, Dr. Paul McPherson. He reports suspected abuse to the Department of Health and Welfare and says it's difficult to see the cases where abuse was noticed but not stopped.
It's always hard to hear that because I just want to say we could have prevented this worse injury. You know, what can we do as a community to help prevent it?
What a shame. How could there be so many abused children in such a wonderful community?
Ron and Barbara are volunteers with Casa Guardians. They're caseworkers who investigate alongside the Department of Health and Welfare.
We go to the homes, we go to the schools, we attend after-school functions with the children. We try to develop a relationship with the kids where they will trust us.
Ron says their goal is finding the safest place for each child.
These children, they don't have a choice. They're being neglected, they're being abused. They didn't ask to be where they are. They need help.
He says the biggest problem is a big need for money and resources.
The organizations that are trying to help them badly need funding.
Roger Sherman with Idaho Children's Trust Fund says there is minimal state funding to address the problem. In fact, Idaho spends the second lowest amount in the country.
But there are states that are spending a great deal more money. People have very strong home visiting programs, for example, that they're funding with state dollars. They're using their dollars for parenting classes.
In 2010, Child Trends reports Idaho spent nearly $22 million to address the problem. We compared that to neighboring states with even smaller populations. Montana spent just over $35 million, and Wyoming spent nearly $37 million. Sherman says a lack of funds means a lack of family resource centers, crisis nurseries, and in-home help for struggling parents.
We have not appropriated enough money to do the kind of job that I think all of us would want to do when it comes to protecting our children.
Representative Grant Burgoyne admits it's something Idaho has struggled with for decades.
I think there is a feeling in Idaho that we don't want the government sticking its nose into the business of families.
Grant says the answer is not just more funding, but more accountability, and says he's pushing what many other states already have, a child death registry to investigate each young tragedy.
When a child dies as the result of abuse, it's not only a tragedy, it's a failing on the part of our state and our community.
As for Joseph's death, it has sparked an internal review of the Department of Health and Welfare's policies, as many agencies look for ways to help protect young lives.
He's still a baby, somebody's baby, and it was so tragic and so preventable.
Molly Collins says she's still heartbroken by the death of 18-year-old McEwen Forbush. Collins herself has an 18-year-old daughter and says it could easily have been her life that was lost.
I'd been in that situation, there by the grace of God, it could have been, my daughter and myself.
Collins tells us they also lived at Sage Crest Apartments in another unit when Forbush died of carbon monoxide poisoning, and that before his death, she and her daughter lived through several scares themselves.
4 different times I had carbon monoxide detectors go off in my apartment.
4 times in just 4 months. The second time, her daughter was home alone, and Collins says paramedics found a high level of carbon monoxide in her system. The fire department's reports confirm that CO was detected in their apartment. The 4th time, Collins herself felt the symptoms.
There was a high enough level in my blood. They said it was, pretty close to at that point where they would usually send people to the ER, but they kept monitoring it and it was going down.
Collins tells us every time firefighters found carbon monoxide in her home, she reported it to the property managers. And every time, nothing was done.
I don't feel like they really did handle it, that they really didn't respond. Again, my emphasis on the fact that they knew there was a problem in these units, and here I was having a problem. They didn't come in and inspect.
Collins tells us she talked to firefighters, the maintenance person, several on-site managers, and requested to speak with someone higher up at First Rate Property Management. But she says she got no response until after the 4th incident, when her water heater was finally replaced. She says after her experience, she's certain the apartment complex could have done more to fix the carbon monoxide leaks.
I really felt like more could have been done, and this was preventable, that this was a preventable and negligent death.
We called the property management group again to give them a chance to respond to Collins' claims. The general manager refused to answer our questions.
I'm not allowed to comment on anything.
We also got a hold of First Rate Property Management's owner by phone. We just want to make sure that we're giving you guys the opportunity to respond.
Right, and I wish I could.
Last week, the Meridian Fire Department told us there were 5 CO calls made to their department from the complex in the last 2 years. They went on to say that number was normal and showed no cause for concern. But after talking with Collins, we went back to the fire department. This time, we learned that Collins' reports had alerted one of their firefighters about a month before Forbush's death.
And the red flag went off in his mind that maybe there's something going on that hasn't been addressed, and that's when our fire marshal got involved.
Chief Mark Niemeyer explained that their role is to respond to calls, not investigate. He says following up on carbon monoxide calls falls on the owner of the property and often involves the gas company. But he tells us they did meet with the property manager to make sure they were handling the situation.
We were advised that they had been looking into that for about a year, that they had already addressed trying to change out some of those water heaters that they found that were possibly faulty.
Niemeyer says their department felt confident in that response, but says the property managers did admit that not all the faulty water heaters had been replaced.
They did tell us they were in that process, that they hadn't all been replaced yet.
While we still don't know if the water heater that led to Forbush's death had been replaced, Collins feels the complex's lack of response was a disregard to their tenants' health. She moved out of Sage Crest Apartments the very same day she found out Forbush had died, just doors away.
I'm devastated by it, saddened, angry.
Now she says she not only worries about Forbush's family, but also those still living at 1805 East Overland.
It's so awful, and I'm fearful. I think nobody should live there unless it's been completely fixed.
For more than 2 decades, Travis Wolford has suited up each day. Most of his career has been spent in Boise, responding to fire after fire, danger after danger.
To me, it's a natural fit for the type of person I am, what I like to do. You know, everybody likes a little excitement, and everybody likes helping other people.
But Wolford didn't know of the hidden risks.
All right, send it, Daddy-o.
Research shows the mix of chemicals in smoke can lead to cancer and other serious illnesses when the toxins absorb into firefighters' skin.
They're still getting in. They're in our gloves. They're in our bunker gear.
It wasn't until a typical day at work back in 2007 when Wolford got a call from his doctor.
I don't think I was really thinking of cancer, but I just knew that it wasn't good. And he said, "You've got cancer, and this is a fast mover, so we need to get going on it."
Wolford had esophageal cancer and rushed home to tell his wife and 6 kids the news he could barely understand. He was fit, never smoked or drank, but soon realized it was his work that may have led to his disease.
I think that it was a factor in triggering cancer, whether it is the main one or a contributing factor. I think it obviously was one.
But even though Wolford had health insurance, he says he didn't have the same support as firefighters in most other states, since Idaho hasn't passed what's called the presumptive illness bill. The law basically provides workers' compensation for full-time firefighters who get certain types of cancer that can be linked to their job.
There's an issue within the fire service, and it's an epidemic.
Matt Pijon volunteers with Idaho's Firefighter Cancer Support Network. The organization helps support those diagnosed and their families. Pijon says the #1 killer for firefighters used to be cardiac arrest. Now, it's cancer.
There's more firefighters now that are dying with their boots off than their boots on, and the statistics are showing that.
Pijon says the recent research is staggering. He says it shows 1 in 3 firefighters will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime.
It's not like people tell you, like when you first start out, hey, you might have a really good chance of getting cancer because you're a firefighter. You don't really think of it that way.
But it's a reality Wolford has to think of daily. He's now in remission, but says had the bill been in place for his diagnosis, it would have saved him both worry and money. He says in the end, his battle cost his family about $60,000.
It was tough because the cancer took center stage, but then you've also got to worry about the family and their survival because you don't know how it's going to turn out.
The bill has been presented several times in recent years and has passed the Senate twice, but has never received a hearing in the House. One lawmaker who's expressed concerns is Representative Stephen Hartgen. He declined an on-camera interview for this story, but spoke to us by phone this summer.
Well, I think it really comes down to the question of the presumption of cause. If you have a medical condition that's brought on by an injury and you can show that, that's the current law, and that's worked well for more than 100 years.
He's not the only one with concerns about the bill. Kevin Courtney is the president of Idaho's Volunteer Fire and Emergency Services Association.
This is a bill that needs to get put in place now because obviously there's people out there that are suffering from these cancers, and you know we sympathize with that. But don't forget about us. Don't forget about the volunteers.
Courtney says more than 70% of Idaho's firefighters are volunteers. And while they don't always face as many calls, when they do respond, the toxins are still there.
Fire doesn't know the difference between full-time and volunteer, and neither should we. We should be able to protect all firefighters, all EMS, and all police.
But Wolford, now back on the job, doesn't want to see others go through what his family did. He wants Idaho to protect those who protect us.
I'm not going to be the last firefighter to get cancer in the state of Idaho. There are going to be others. It's just a matter of time.
Step back to my voice, slowly.
Throughout Idaho, the images captured by both body cameras and dash cameras show the exact moments experienced by law enforcement. From arrests to crashes to fighting off aggressive animals, the videos often help the public see what officers see. It's technology that's been used in Idaho State Police cars since the 80s.
for us, a dash cam became vital. Once that technology grew to that point, we saw it as something that we had to have.
3 decades ago, patrol officers used VHS tapes to record their encounters with the public. Now, it's all digital, captured by cameras showing the backseat of the car and what's in front. Captain Bill Gardner says the videos have been useful both in court as evidence and in situations like this.
All right, we'll let you know you're going to be Bring him on! Bring him on! All right, you are under arrest, sir.
Where images captured help the public understand what really happened when a trooper in North Idaho shot and killed one of the men who attacked him.
If we did not have the in-car camera system, you would not see that the officer was clearly attacked, was clearly afraid for his life, and had to shoot one of these individuals in order to come away with his own life.
Meridian police say several years ago they also realized their officers needed the transparency the video provides and have been working ever since to get these.
Every time a video is taken, it's color, it's got audio, and it's immediately encrypted.
State-of-the-art body cameras that can be mounted in several locations.
They can simply put on a pair of Oakley sunglasses, and the camera will be mounted up here at head level.
Turned on by pressing a button whenever an officer reaches a call. Lieutenant Scott Coliani says the hardest part isn't capturing the video, but storing and releasing the images that could be sensitive.
And there also hasn't been a lot of case law that deals with body-worn cameras and what we should be filming and what, through the court system. And so this book hasn't been closed on this. This is just something that's just emerging now.
Right now, most agencies in Idaho use the same public records request for any written report. But he says the privacy issue is still unclear. The Canyon County Sheriff's Office has been using both dash cameras and body cameras for years, along with audio recordings as well.
I like transparency. If it is something that is covered by state statute that can be released, I think we should be able to release it.
But Captain Dana Maxfield says the cameras aren't perfect, and they don't always provide an accurate picture of exactly what happened.
Alrighty.
All the agencies we talked to agree that the video clearly shows what's happening directly in front of the camera, but it may not show what's going on beside or around the officer.
All you're seeing is what that camera's seeing. That may be very limited as information as to what actually is transpiring.
The Ada County Sheriff's Office switched from dash cameras to body cameras at the end of 2014 and says they're constantly reviewing their privacy policies when it comes to releasing videos.
We want to have as much footage, as much video of all of our contacts as possible. But right now, that privacy law is a very fine balance that we play.
Even the Idaho Sheriff's Association is addressing the issue in its upcoming conference this summer, hoping the Bureau of Justice Assistance can help give Idaho agencies guidance on how to balance privacy concerns and the public's right to see what was captured.
What we hope is we hope to receive some model policies in terms of what's being done, where they're doing it right now, what issues have they addressed, what are the problem areas.
We called every sheriff's office in Idaho to see which agencies use cameras. Out of the 40 that responded, 24 sheriff's departments use both body cams and dash cams. 10 use dash cameras only, 5 use body cameras only, and just 1 department has neither. Given those statistics, we were surprised to learn officers in Idaho's capital city don't use body cameras or dash cameras. So we asked why. A spokesperson for the Boise Police Department declined an interview, but did provide a written statement saying in part, quote, costs are direct and indirect, one-time and ongoing, including equipment, storage, and additional personnel. Privacy of those whose images or homes would be captured on video is also a concern. Boise officers do use audio recording devices, and about 20 years ago, briefly tried dash cameras in a handful of patrol cars, but decided they weren't useful. But Vaughn Killeen, who's also a former Ada County sheriff, says despite national concerns over privacy, the videos do help keep both law enforcement and the public safer.
Some of the data that's out there suggests strongly that agencies that use body cameras have fewer incidences of assaults between officers and citizens and those kinds of things. And that's our goal. Our goal is to reduce those sorts of things. But it's much more complicated than a lot of folks believe out there.
A complicated issue, but one many agencies in our state say they've grown to depend on. Cameras they believe are needed to capture the public's trust.